If someone had told me a year ago that I'd be standing in a bathroom, heart pounding like a drum, with my straight best friend just beyond the fogged-up shower door, I would have laughed it off as some fantasy, the kind born from loneliness. But looking back now, maybe the signs were always there. Small, fleeting moments I had ignored, brushed off as jokes, or buried beneath the kind of silence only fear can create. Jake and I had been best friends since ninth grade. We met in history class after both failing the same pop quiz, then spent an entire afternoon laughing our way through detention. From that moment on, we were inseparable. He was everything I wasn't: outgoing, athletic, effortlessly confident in his own skin. I, on the other hand, was quieter, more observant, the kind of guy who blended into the background unless someone needed help with their homework or a ride home. Despite our differences, something just clicked between us. Our friendship was built on late-night drives, inside jokes, and weekends spent gaming or hanging out at each other's houses. And somewhere along the way, between movie marathons, gym sessions, shirtless summer days, and casual wrestling matches, I started feeling something more, something deeper, something I refused to admit, not to myself, and definitely not to him. I told myself it didn't matter. Jake was straight. He dated girls, plenty of them, in fact. He always had a new story to share about the latest girl who ghosted him or the one who still texted him at 3 a.m. It became a routine. Him talking, me listening, pretending I didn't care while ignoring the quiet ache in my chest every time his face lit up for someone else. But I never said anything. How could I? It wasn't worth losing what we had over a feeling I wasn't even sure was real. Besides, it wasn't like he had ever hinted at wanting anything more than friendship. At least, not until recently. There had been moments, subtle, confusing moments that made me second-guess everything. Like the time we went swimming last month, and he swam up behind me, his hands lingering a little too long on my shoulders. Or when he crashed at my place after a party, ignoring the perfectly good spare bed and slipping under the covers with me, like it was the most natural thing in the world. We never talked about it the next day. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe I was just seeing what I wanted to see. Or maybe, just maybe, I wasn't wrong. Something more. That's what I was thinking the night everything started to shift. It was just another one of those casual nights. Jake and I hit the gym after work, laughing our way through a half-hearted workout, racing each other on the treadmill like we were still in high school. Afterward, we grabbed takeout and headed back to my apartment. This had become our routine, Jake crashing at my place whenever he didn't feel like going home, tossing his gym bag by the door, and sprawling out on my couch like he owned the place. I loved having him there, even if it made things complicated. The way he stretched out, completely at ease, the way his laugh echoed in my small apartment. It filled a silence I hadn't even realized I was living with. We put on a movie but barely paid attention, talking over most of it. When it ended, neither of us moved. Jake sat there, one leg folded under him, his arm resting behind me on the back of the couch, so close I could feel the warmth of his skin. "You mind if I shower?" he asked, stretching lazily. His t-shirt rolled up just enough to expose a sliver of toned abs. I blinked, suddenly struggling to focus. No. Go ahead. Towels are in the usual spot." "Cool," he said, grabbing his bag, but before heading to the bathroom, he smirked. "Don't miss me too much?" I rolled my eyes, forcing a playful tone. "Yeah, I'll cry the whole time." He laughed on his way to the bathroom, and then the door clicked shut behind him. A few seconds later, I heard the water turn on. I stared at the black screen of the TV, but my mind was far from still. The sound of the shower filled the apartment, the steady rhythm of water hitting tile. Steam curled from under the bathroom door, creeping into the hallway. And before I could stop it, an image of Jake behind that curtain, water gliding down his back, steam softening the lines of his body, flooded my thoughts. I shook my head, trying to push it away, but the thoughts kept coming. Uninvited, unwelcome. I hated how easily my mind betrayed me, how much of him lived in my imagination these days. Restless, I got up and started pacing, searching for any kind of distraction, the fridge, the bookshelf, anything. But nothing worked. My heart was racing. My hands felt clammy. I cursed myself under my breath for being this wound up over something so stupid. And then I heard it. "Hey," Jake's voice, muffled by the bathroom door but clear. "Can you toss me a towel?" I forgot to grab one. I froze. My eyes snapped toward the closed door. My stomach twisted into a tight knot. Yeah," I called back, trying to sound normal. I grabbed a towel from the cabinet and walked toward the bathroom. The steam was thicker now, curling around the edges of the door like it was trying to escape. I hesitated, gripping the towel in my hands. "Just push it open," Jake said from inside. "It's not locked." I hesitated again. "You sure?" "Dude, come on," Jake laughed. "It's not like we haven't seen each other naked before. Locker rooms, remember?" "Right," I mumbled, trying not to think about how those moments had affected me even then. Swallowing hard, I reached for the doorknob and slowly pushed it open. Steam rolled out in waves, instantly fogging my glasses. The heat hit me like a wall, thick and almost suffocating. For a second, I just stood there, towel in hand, trying to adjust to the warmth and the overwhelming scent of his body, wash lingering in the air. "Over here," Jake called casually. I stepped in just far enough to see him through the half-closed shower curtain. His silhouette was blurred by the fog, but still unmistakably him. Tall, toned, relaxed. I held out the towel, my hand trembling slightly. He reached for it, his fingers wet and warm as they brushed against mine. And in that brief moment of contact, something shifted. Subtle, but undeniable. His fingers lingered just a second longer than necessary. My breath caught. "Thanks," he said, but his voice was quieter now. Different. I tried to pull away, to step back before I did something stupid. But then he spoke again. "Hey, you okay?" I froze. Steam curled around us, thick and heavy. My heart pounded. "I'm fine," I said, too quickly. Silence, then. "You sure? You've been weird lately." I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Because he was right. I had been weird, distant, jumpy. And now, standing here in the humid haze, his fingers still ghosting against mine, I knew exactly why. My feet were rooted to the tile. The towel clutched loosely in my grip, though his touch had already slipped away. But the warmth of his fingers still lingered, impossible to ignore. The water was still running behind the thin curtain, but it sounded distant now, like background noise against the thunder of my own heartbeat. "You've been weird lately," Jake repeated, softer this time. His tone wasn't accusing. If anything, it was thoughtful, almost concerned. Not bad weird, just distant, like you're always somewhere else in your head. I swallowed hard, but my throat felt dry. I couldn't see his face clearly through the steam, but I could feel his gaze on me, even if it was half hidden behind the curtain. I didn't know what to say. What could I say? The truth would crack everything wide open, and I wasn't sure we could put it back together if it shattered. He waited, but when I didn't answer, he let out a quiet sigh. "If it's something I did, you can tell me." "It's not you," I said quickly. The words escaped before I could filter them. "You didn't do anything wrong." "Then what is it?" His voice was closer now. I looked up instinctively and realized the curtain had been pulled back slightly. Not all the way, just a few inches. Just enough to see the curve of his shoulder, the slope of his chest glistening with water, expression partially visible through the haze. This time there was no teasing grin. Just quiet, steady curiosity, and something else I couldn't name. "I can't," I said, my voice hoarse. "It's complicated." Jake's brow furrowed and he tilted his head slightly. "Complicated how?" I hesitated again. Fear had me paralyzed. Fear of saying it. Fear of seeing the look in his eyes shift from openness to something colder. Fear that he'd step back, wrap the towel around himself, and walk out the door, taking every piece of what we had with him. But he didn't move. He just stood there, still dripping, still watching me, waiting with the same patience he always had when I was struggling. And suddenly, I was tired of holding it all in. "I like you," I said. The words came out so quietly I wasn't even sure I'd said them aloud. But I saw it, the flicker in his eyes, that tiny shift in his expression, the way his lips parted slightly in surprise. The seconds that followed stretched into eternity. The silence between us was dense, suffocating. I couldn't breathe. Wouldn't move. "I like you," I said again, firmer this time, as if saying it twice might make the first time less terrifying. "Not like a friend. Not like a joke. Not because I'm lonely or confused or whatever else. I've been trying to ignore it, but I can't anymore." His eyes searched mine, and for the longest time he didn't speak. He didn't smile. He didn't pull the curtain closed. He didn't laugh or back away or tell me I'd ruined everything. He just stood there, letting the water wash over him, letting my words sink in, like raindrops through cracked pavement. "You really feel that way?" he finally asked, his voice low. I nodded slowly, unable to do anything else. My heart thudded against my ribs, raw and exposed. "I didn't mean for it to happen," I admitted. "I didn't want to, but yeah, I do." Jake was quiet again. Steam curled between us like smoke from a fire that had already started to burn. Then, to my absolute shock, he reached for the faucet. The sound of the running shower stopped instantly, replaced by the low hiss of steam and the faint creak of the curtain rings. The silence was deafening. And then, he pulled the curtain back. He stood there, water still trickling down his skin, his body bathed in the soft, golden light from the overhead bulb. His towel was draped over the side rail, but untouched. His chest rose and fell slowly, and his eyes stayed locked on mine. He didn't reach for the towel. He didn't break the moment. If anything, it felt like he was trying to close the distance between us without taking a single step. "I had a feeling," he said finally, his voice even. I blinked. "What?" "I had a feeling," he repeated. "The way you've been acting lately. The way you look at me sometimes. I didn't want to assume anything, but—" He trailed off and his eyes softened just a little. "I'm not blind." My breath caught in my throat. "So, you're not angry?" He shook his head slowly. I'm not angry. He stepped forward, just once, barefoot on the tile, water still dripping from his hair. He stood in front of me, no curtain between us, no jokes or distractions, just raw, unfiltered honesty. But I am curious, he said. I swallowed hard. About what? About how long you felt this way. About why you never told me. He paused, then added, and about what happens next. I stared at him, unsure how to respond. My emotions were a mess. Relief, fear, confusion, longing, all crashing into each other like waves in a storm. I didn't tell you because I was scared, I admitted. I thought it would ruin everything. Did it? He asked, his fingers lightly against my wrist. It was barely a touch, but it sent a shiver up my spine. That's up to you, he said softly. His voice carried no pressure, no expectation, just quiet sincerity. I swallowed hard, searching his face for something, anything, that would tell me this wasn't just some fleeting moment, that it wasn't just curiosity or the heat of the moment. But Jake wasn't uncertain. He wasn't playing games. He was here, standing in front of me, waiting. I don't know what happens next, I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. Jake's lips quirked into a small smile. Then I guess we figure it out together. His fingers tightened slightly around mine, grounding me, anchoring me to the moment. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't scared. Pressed against the door, as if I needed something solid to keep me from floating away. Jake stopped just inches away from me, his presence overwhelming in the quiet space. He studied my face, his expression unreadable but open, raw. I don't have all the answers, he admitted, his voice steady. But I know I don't want to pretend anymore, and I don't want you to either. My chest tightened at his words, at the weight of them. You sure? I whispered. Because once we step over this line, there's no going back. Jake exhaled, then lifted a hand, hesitating just briefly before cupping my jaw. His touch was warm, grounding, and I felt myself lean into it without thinking. I don't think I want to go back, he said. Do you? I searched his face for doubt, hesitation, but there was none. Just quiet certainty and something else, something I wasn't ready to name but felt all the same. Slowly, deliberately, I reached up, letting my fingers brush against his wrist, holding him there just a little longer. No, I said, barely a breath. I don't. And just like that, the space between us disappeared. The other to take the next step. Jake's gaze locked onto mine, his pupils dark with something deep, something that sent a shiver down my spine. Not fear, not uncertainty, just anticipation. I don't want to mess this up, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. You won't, I promised, my voice steadier than I felt. He exhaled slowly like he was letting go of the last bit of hesitation, and then he closed the distance between us. I didn't know who made the first move. Maybe we both did. Maybe it didn't even matter. All I knew was that one moment, the space between us still existed, and the next, it didn't. Jake's lips found mine, no longer tentative like before, no longer a whisper of curiosity. This was real, certain, and unspoken words melted into the warmth of the moment. There was no hesitation now, no silent questions lingering in the air. Whatever had been unraveling inside him had finally snapped into place, and I responded like I had been holding my breath for years. My hands found his jaw, then slid into his hair, fingers curling as if afraid to let go. The way he kissed me was different, stronger, filled with a hunger we had both ignored for too long. I kissed him back with the same intensity, the weight of unspoken years dissolving between us. He pulled me closer, our breaths tangling as if we were trying to memorize the feeling. His hands moved with certainty now, learning, exploring, understanding. There was warmth between us, a steady pull neither of us resisted anymore. His forehead rested against mine, his voice barely above a whisper. Tell me if I'm going too fast. You're not, I breathed, my voice trembling. Please don't stop. That was all he needed. He let his hands settle over my shoulders, his touch filled with something tender, something deliberate. He looked at me then, his expression open and unguarded, and for the first time I saw it, the quiet courage it took to step into the unknown with me. I've never done this, he admitted softly. I know, I whispered, touching his cheek gently. It's okay. He exhaled, his breath shaky, but his eyes held something steady. But I want to. My heart flipped, and I nodded. Me too. And so we moved forward together, not with reckless abandon, but with a careful kind of certainty. It wasn't perfect. There were nervous laughs, awkward shifts, and whispered reassurances, but none of it mattered. What mattered was the way he held me, the way I held him back, the way we fit together like we had been waiting for this all along. It was raw, real, and powerful in a way I never could have imagined. When it was over, we lay tangled in each other, breaths still uneven, hearts pounding in sync. His hand rested on my chest, his thumb tracing slow circles, grounding me in the moment. His face was buried against my shoulder, and I could feel his breath. Warm, steady, real. I didn't want to move. I didn't want to lose this. After a long silence, he whispered, "So, that just happened." I let out a quiet laugh, running my fingers through his hair. "Yeah, it did." He lifted his head then, looking at me with an expression I had never seen before, soft, certain, something more. "I don't know what this means," he admitted, "but I'm not sorry." "Me neither," I said. He kissed me again, slower this time, unhurried, like we had all the time in the world. Maybe we did, because something had changed between us, something irreversible. There was no going back, not after this. The morning after felt different, not uncertain, not heavy, but quiet in a way that felt safe. Jake's arm was still draped over my waist, his steady breathing warm against my neck. I lay there, watching the sunlight filter through the blinds, trying to hold on to this moment, trying to memorize the way it felt, the way he had held me, the way he had whispered my name like it was something sacred. Eventually he stirred, his arm tightening briefly around me before he shifted, his lips brushing my shoulder lazily. "You awake?" he murmured, voice rough with sleep. "Yeah," I whispered back, my heart fluttering. He didn't say anything at first, just let out a deep breath and buried his face against my neck again. I was hoping it wasn't a dream. A smile tugged at my lips. It wasn't. We didn't make any grand declarations that morning. There were no sudden decisions, no labels. We just existed in the same space, closer than ever, both of us carefully navigating what this new reality meant. But when he looked at me over coffee, bare-chested in my kitchen like it was the most natural thing in the world, I saw it again, that shift in his eyes. Like I wasn't just his best friend anymore, like I was something more, something he wasn't ready to define, but something he knew he didn't want to lose. Over the next few weeks, we didn't tell anyone. We didn't need to. What we had was ours, private, unfolding at its own pace. There were moments of hesitation, of course. Moments where he would pause before reaching for my hand, or when I would wonder if he was second-guessing everything. But he never pulled away. If anything, he leaned in more. He teased me with quiet kisses, stayed over at my place more often than his own, wrapped his arms around me on the couch like it had always been this way. He still called me his best friend, but sometimes he said it differently. Softer, more intimate. And sometimes, late at night, when everything else was quiet, he'd reach for me under the sheets and whisper, "I still don't know what this is, but I know it feels right." And I'd whisper back, "That's enough for now." Because it was. Love doesn't always arrive with certainty. Sometimes it disguises itself as friendship, wrapped in hesitation and fear, only revealing its true form when you're brave enough to embrace it. That night changed everything. Not just because of what happened, but because it opened a door we had both been too afraid to walk through before. And now, finally, we weren't afraid anymore. So, that's our story. And even now, I can tell you, we're happy. We still have a long road ahead of us, still figuring things out, but for the first time, we're doing it together. And honestly, that's all that matters. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you have any advice for us, I'd love to hear it. Thanks for listening.